Welcome to today's episode where we're going to learn how to parse in some JSON-LD data with RDF4J and store it in a database. The first thing that I have done is I've created myself a Java project with Maven, and I want to get hold of the dependency for everything we're going to need from RDF4J to get started. To do that, we can go here to the download section on the RDF4J webpage and copy the dependency here. We're also going to copy the version from the BOM system, but I'm not going to use the bill of materials for this small little project. RDF4J storage includes everything that we're going to need to get started today. It includes databases, it includes parsers, and it includes querying of the data. But you may not want to use this dependency in your production environment, because this does bring in quite a lot of things, and maybe you prefer to just import the dependencies that you need. But what we're going to do today is we're going to parse in some JSON-LD data. So Google with schema.org have created a new schema for adding COVID-19 testing facility announcements to your webpage. UPMC has a list of these testing facilities on their site, and they have actually used this JSON-LD format in their source. So we're going to copy this JSON-LD and put it into a file that we can then parse in. We're going to need a class to get started, and what we're going to do is we're just going to use Rio to parse it to begin with. We're going to use a file reader, and I'm not going to use the base URI, and this is JSON-LD. We have some exceptions here, and then we can see if this works. There. Yeah, no errors. Let's take a look at what we have parsed. So I'm just going to use a very simple for each to print all the statements in the model. That's going to make it simpler for me to work with. There. So what we can see here is essentially the same as we saw here in our JSON-LD data. But for this model here, we can do some things. For instance, what if we want to just get the address localities? So to do that, we're going to need to use the simple value factory to create an IRI there, and then we can filter on this IRI later. Let's actually call it address locality. So we can do here, we can filter on everything, every statement with address locality in it. Let's run this, and now we get these address localities out. If we want to go further and we want to, for instance, query this data, we're going to need something more than just a model. The model is a simple, easy way to get started, and a nice way to keep your data. The model does have indexes to make access faster, but if we want to be able to run Sparkle queries, for instance, we're going to need something a bit more robust. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the memory store, and we're going to wrap it in a sale repository. This gives us very nice tooling around it, and we must remember to shut down our sale repository. So the interaction with a sale repository is through this connection. It's like you would consider it a database connection, essentially. We can add data to this, and for that we should be able to use the exact same syntax as we did here for our model parsing. Let's also remove this model here, and let's try to get data out of this repository. So we're going to get statements that have address locality, and it's always a good idea to close both here as I'm closing my connection, and also to close anything that I get from the database. There. Now we should get the exact same output now. Yeah, here we see these address localities. Now, since this is a memory store, if we comment out adding the data, there will not be any data in our database because it doesn't remember anything. It's everything stored in memory. But if we do want to store it on disk, we can use the native store. With a native store, we need to provide it with a place for it to store its data. So I'm just going to store it in a directory called native store. And I'm going to delete the directory here to make sure that everything is clean for us. Let's run this and see what happens. First of all, the memory store was faster than the native store, but we have so little data here, it doesn't really make a difference. Let's comment out this connection add. So we're just going to query the data that's already in the database. And if we run it, we can see it works fine. Now, of course, maybe you're worried, what happens if I add the data twice? Well, we're probably going to get twice the number of results. Essentially, that's because these are blank nodes, because our JSON-LD does not specify an ID for these elements here. So that was essentially how to get started with RDF4J, with parsing in some JSON-LD data and storing it in a database. Thank you for watching.